The party was already spinning out of control by the time I arrived. The host, a coworker of Lisa's named Greg, had invited us to celebrate his promotion. The house was packed, music thumping so loud it made my chest vibrate. I hadn't planned on coming at all. I hated these pretentious gatherings where everyone tried to one-up each other with fake laughs and overpriced whiskey. But Lisa insisted. She'd been unusually pushy about it, practically shoving my jacket at me when I hesitated. "Come on, Alex," she said, rolling her eyes. "Do you want people to think I came here alone? Just for once, make an effort." It was an odd thing to say. I always made an effort, didn't I? But I let it go, brushed off the sting of her tone, and followed her out the door. As soon as we stepped inside Greg's house, Lisa disappeared into the crowd. One moment she was next to me, clutching her sequined clutch. The next she was gone, swallowed by the sea of chatter and clinking glasses. I wasn't bothered at first. Lisa was the social butterfly and I was more of a wallflower. She had always been the lively one, the one who thrived on attention. I grabbed a drink and leaned against the wall, trying to fade into the background like I always did at these events. But something felt different this time. From my corner of the room, I watched Lisa flit from group to group, her laughter carrying over the music. She looked radiant, her dress hugging her curves in all the right places. I should have felt proud, maybe even lucky. Instead, unease crept up my spine. She wasn't just mingling. She was performing. Her laugh was too loud, her gestures too big, her touches, casual brushes of the arm, playful nudges, lingered too long. Then I saw him, tall, with a perfectly tailored suit and the kind of jawline that made you want to punch him. He was standing too close to Lisa, his hand resting on the small of her back as she threw her head back and laughed. It wasn't just any laugh. It was our laugh, the one she saved for private moments, the one that made me fall in love with her all those years ago. My grip tightened around the glass in my hand. I told myself it was nothing. She was just being friendly. But when he leaned in to whisper something in her ear, and she touched his chest in response, I felt my stomach drop. I tried to convince myself to stay calm, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was watching something I wasn't supposed to see. I downed my drink, grabbed another, and started making my way toward them. Halfway there, someone called my name. "Alex, long time no see, man." It was an old college friend, drunk and oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I exchanged a few stiff words, my eyes darting back to Lisa and her new friend. When I finally broke free and looked again, they were gone. Panic set in. I scanned the room, weaving through the crowd, searching for that golden hair and the shimmer of her dress. Nothing. Then I spotted them. Lisa and Mr. Perfect disappearing through a side door that led to the patio. My heart was pounding as I followed them, slipping out into the cool night air. The patio was empty, but I heard voices, hers and his, coming from the garden path just beyond the pool. I moved quietly, staying in the shadows, my pulse thundering in my ears. What I saw stopped me dead in my tracks. They were standing close, too close, under the glow of a garden lamp. His hand was on her waist, hers on his shoulder. She was smiling, but it wasn't the smile she gave me. It was something else, something more dangerous. He leaned in and she didn't pull away. I don't remember dropping the glass I was holding, but the sound of it shattering on the patio tiles echoed loud enough to break the spell. Lisa jerked back, her eyes wide with shock, then narrowing as she saw me standing there. "Alex, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice sharp and defensive, as if I were the one in the wrong. I didn't answer. My eyes flicked to him, then back to her, my brain struggling to process what I'd just seen. Who the hell is he? I finally managed to choke out, my voice trembling with rage. The man, to his credit or maybe his cowardice, backed away, raising his hands. "Hey man, I didn't know she was—" "Don't," I snapped, cutting him off. "Just don't." Lisa stepped between us, her arms crossed, her expression a mix of irritation and guilt. "Alex, calm down. It's not what it looks like." It wasn't what it looked like, really, because from where I was standing, it looked like my wife was moments away from doing something that would destroy everything we'd built together. But I didn't say that. Not yet. I just stared at her, my chest heaving, waiting for her to explain, waiting for her to lie. The tension between us was suffocating. Lisa stood there, arms crossed, her lips pressed into a tight line. The garden seemed too quiet now, the muffled thump of music from the house a distant hum. The man, her man, had slinked off like a rat, leaving us alone in the dim glow of the garden lights. "Alex," she said finally, her tone low and clipped, "you're overreacting." I stared at her, struggling to keep my composure. "Overreacting? Lisa, I saw him. I saw you." She rolled her eyes and let out an exasperated sigh, like a teacher dealing with an unruly student. "Oh, for God's sake. He's just a coworker. We were talking, that's all." "Talking?" I stepped closer, my voice rising despite myself. "You call that talking? Lisa, he had his hands all over you." Her expression shifted, hardening into something colder, sharper. "Lower your voice," she hissed. "You're making a scene." I laughed bitterly, the sound foreign even to my own ears. "A scene? You want to talk about scenes? Because this looks like something straight out of a soap opera." "Lisa." She turned her back on me, pacing toward the edge of the garden as if she could walk away from the conversation. I followed her, my anger boiling over now. "You think I'm stupid?" I snapped. "That I don't notice how you've been acting lately? The late nights, the secrecy, the way you light up around people who aren't me? What's going on, Lisa?" She spun around, her eyes flashing with anger. "What's going on? You want to know what's going on? I'm tired, Alex. Tired of feeling like I'm married to a shadow. You don't listen to me. You don't see me. I needed someone to talk to. Someone who actually pays attention." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stumbled back a step, staring at her in disbelief. "So what? This is my fault now? You're blaming me for whatever the hell this is?" She didn't answer. Instead, she turned her face away, her jaw clenched tight. "Lisa," I said, my voice trembling now, quieter but no less intense. "Just tell me the truth. I deserve that much, at least. Is there someone else?" For a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or regret. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by that icy mask she wore so well. "You're being ridiculous," she said, brushing past me and heading toward the house. "I'm not having this conversation with you right now." I reached out, grabbing her arm. Not hard, just enough to stop her. She froze, then turned back to glare at me, her eyes like daggers. "Don't walk away from me," I said, my voice steady now. "Not until you tell me the truth." For a long, agonizing moment, we just stood there, staring at each other. Then she shook her head, yanking her arm free. "You want the truth, Alex?" she spat. "Fine. I've been unhappy for years. You're boring, predictable, and you're holding me back. So yeah, I found someone who makes me feel alive again. Someone who isn't afraid to have a little fun. Are you happy now?" The words hit me like a sledgehammer. My world tilted, the ground beneath me suddenly unsteady. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. Lisa smirked, as if she'd won some twisted game. "You wanted the truth, didn't you? Well, there it is." She turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the garden path as she disappeared into the house. I stood there, frozen, the night air cold against my skin. For the first time in my life, I felt truly powerless. The rest of the night was a blur. I stood in the garden for what felt like hours, replaying her words over and over in my head. Boring, predictable, holding her back. Each phrase hit like a hammer, breaking apart the foundation of everything I thought I knew about our marriage. When I finally mustered the strength to go back inside, the party had shifted into full chaos mode. Greg was drunk and singing off-key with a group of equally inebriated coworkers, while someone else had spilled wine on the carpet and was trying to scrub it with a throw pillow. None of it registered. All I could think about was Lisa. I scanned the crowd, half expecting to see her with him again, but she was nowhere in sight. My mind raced with possibilities. Was she upstairs? In a bathroom? Or worse, had she left with him? The thought made my chest tighten. I needed answers. Greg was leaning against the kitchen counter when I approached him, a half-empty bottle of scotch in his hand. He grinned when he saw me, slapping my shoulder like we were old friends. "Alex, enjoying the party?" he slurred. "Have you seen Lisa?" I asked, my voice tight. He frowned, clearly not expecting the question. Yeah, I think she went upstairs. Maybe the guest room? Why? Everything okay? I didn't answer. I was already moving, my legs carrying me toward the staircase like I was on autopilot. My heart pounded in my ears as I climbed, every step heavier than the last. The hallway upstairs was dimly lit, the muffled sounds of the party fading as I reached the top. I hesitated outside the guest room door, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Part of me wanted to turn around, to leave and pretend none of this was happening. But the other part, the part that needed to know, forced me to push the door open. The room was dark, but I could make out two figures inside. Lisa and him. They were standing close, their voices low and urgent. She had her hand on his chest, just like before. What the hell is going on? My voice cut through the darkness like a blade. They both jumped, turning to face me. Lisa's eyes went wide with shock while the man, who I now recognized as someone from her office, looked like he wanted to crawl under a rock. Alex, this isn't what it looks like, Lisa said quickly, stepping between us like she was trying to shield him from me. I laughed bitterly. You know, you keep saying that, but it always looks exactly like what it is. The man held up his hands, backing away. Look, man, I don't want any trouble. Then you shouldn't have put your hands on my wife, I snapped, cutting him off. Alex, stop, Lisa said, her voice sharp. This is my fault. Okay? Not his. Leave him out of this. Her words only made my anger burn hotter. I turned to her, my fists clenched at my sides. You want me to leave him out of this? Fine. Let's talk about you, Lisa. Let's talk about how you've been sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face. How long has this been going on? Huh? Weeks? Months? She didn't answer. Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. Wow, I said, shaking my head. You know, I knew things were rough between us, but I never thought you'd stoop this low. Lisa crossed her arms, her expression hardening. Don't act like you're some saint, Alex. You're not exactly easy to live with. Oh, so this is my fault now? I barked, my voice rising. Do you hear yourself? You cheated on me, Lisa. You lied to me, and now you're trying to pin this on me. She rolled her eyes, exhaling sharply. You're being dramatic. Dramatic, I repeated, incredulous. You've been having an affair, Lisa. That's not dramatic. That's betrayal. The man, clearly uncomfortable, muttered something about leaving and slipped past me, disappearing down the hallway. I didn't stop him. My focus was entirely on Lisa now. Why? I asked, my voice quieter now, almost breaking. Why would you do this to us? She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw regret in her eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by that cold, distant mask. Because I was tired of feeling stuck, she said simply. With you, with this life. I needed something more. And he gave me that. Her words cut deeper than I thought possible. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me, like I was free falling with no end in sight. I took a step back, shaking my head. You're unbelievable, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Lisa didn't respond. She just stood there, staring at me, as if waiting for me to make the next move. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. This wasn't the woman I married. This wasn't someone who cared about me or our life together. She had made her choice, and now it was time for me to make mine. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the room, out of the house, and into the cold night. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't go back. Not to her, not to this life. Not anymore. The night air hit me like a slap to the face, icy and sharp. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for my car keys, the adrenaline still surging through me. Every word Lisa had said echoed in my head like a taunt, each one cutting deeper than the last. I drove aimlessly for hours, the city lights blurring into streaks of color. I didn't want to go home. Not to the house we shared, the one filled with memories that now felt like cruel lies. I didn't even know where I was going, but my mind was racing, trying to piece together everything I'd missed. How long had she been unhappy? How long had she been lying to me? Every shared laugh, every intimate moment, every promise we made to each other. Was it all fake? Eventually, I found myself parked outside a 24-hour diner. The neon sign buzzed faintly, casting a pink glow over the cracked asphalt. I didn't know why I was there, but the idea of sitting in my car, alone with my thoughts, felt unbearable. Inside, the smell of coffee and frying bacon greeted me. I slid into a booth in the corner, avoiding eye contact with the waitress as she poured me a cup of coffee. I didn't even like coffee, but I needed anything to ground me. My phone buzzed on the table, the screen lighting up with Lisa's name. I stared at it, my chest tightening. She hadn't called or texted once since I left the party. And now, suddenly, she cared? The buzzing stopped, only to start again a moment later. This time, I picked it up. "What?" I said, my voice flat. "Where are you?" she demanded. No hello, no apology. Just her usual sharp tone, like I was the one who needed to explain myself. "Out," I replied, staring into the dark liquid in my cup. "Out where?" she snapped. "Do you have any idea how childish you're being right now?" I laughed bitterly, the sound surprising even me. "Childish? Lisa, I walked in on you with another man tonight. But yeah, sure, I'm the one acting childish." She sighed heavily, as if I were an inconvenience. "I told you it wasn't what it looked like." "Stop saying that," I interrupted, my voice rising. A couple in a nearby booth glanced over, but I didn't care. "I'm not stupid, Lisa. I'm done playing this game." There was a pause on her end, the kind that made my stomach churn. Then she said, "Look, can you just come home so we can talk about this like adults?" "Why? So you can feed me more lies?" I shot back. "Alex," she said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. "Please, I don't want to do this over the phone." I hesitated, torn between my anger and the part of me that still wanted answers. "I'll be there in 20, I said finally, hanging up before she could respond. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark except for the porch light. Lisa's car was parked where it always was, the sight of it sending another wave of anger through me. She was waiting for me, probably rehearsing whatever excuses she was about to throw my way. I stepped inside, and there she was, sitting on the couch with a glass of wine in her hand. She looked up when I entered, her expression unreadable. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. "Okay," I said, closing the door behind me. "I'm here. Talk." Lisa set her glass down and stood, crossing her arms. "I don't even know where to start," she admitted, her voice shaky. "How about with the truth?" I said, my tone sharper than I intended. She winced but didn't back down. "Fine," she said, taking a deep breath. "Yes, I've been seeing someone, but it's not what you think. It wasn't about, it was emotional. I needed someone to talk to, someone who, don't," I interrupted, holding up a hand. "Don't insult me by pretending it was innocent. I saw the way you looked at him. I'm not blind, Lisa." She bit her lip, her eyes darting away. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she admitted finally. "It just happened." "It just happened?" I repeated, incredulous. "You don't just happen into an affair, Lisa. You make choices. And you chose to betray me." She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I didn't plan for this, Alex. But can you honestly say you're surprised? We've been drifting apart for years. You're so detached all the time, like you don't even care anymore." My anger flared again. "So this is my fault? That's what you're saying? You cheated because I wasn't fun enough for you?" "I'm not saying that," she said quickly, but her expression told a different story. I shook my head, laughing bitterly. "Unbelievable. You know what, Lisa? If you were so unhappy, you could have talked to me. You could have told me how you felt. But instead, you went behind my back. You destroyed everything we had." "I didn't destroy anything," she snapped, her voice rising. "This marriage was broken long before I ever—" "Stop," I said, cutting her off. "Just stop." She fell silent, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. For a moment, I thought she might apologize, but instead, she just stood there, arms crossed, as if daring me to say something else. I realized then that there was no fixing this. No amount of talking or apologies would change what she'd done, or the person she'd become. I can't do this anymore, I said quietly. Lisa's eyes widened. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm done, I replied, my voice steady now. This marriage is over. Her face crumpled, but I didn't stay to watch. I turned and walked out, closing the door behind me. This time I knew I wasn't coming back. The cold air outside hit me harder this time, but it wasn't the kind of cold that made you shiver. It was the kind that sharpened your senses, focused your mind. The fire in my chest hadn't dimmed. It was blazing, but now it wasn't just anger fueling it. It was clarity. Lisa's betrayal wasn't just personal. It was an insult to everything I'd given her, everything I'd sacrificed to make her happy. And she had the audacity to act like she was the victim, like I was the problem. No, this wasn't going to end with her walking away scot-free, sipping her wine, and feeling justified in her actions. She needed to feel the weight of what she'd done. I got into my car and drove, not aimlessly this time, but with a purpose. By the time I reached the destination, my mind was set. I walked into the office the next morning with a calmness that felt foreign after the chaos of the previous night. Lisa worked on the same floor as me, different departments, but close enough that we'd sometimes bump into each other in the elevator. Normally, I'd avoid her after what had happened, but not today. I spotted her in the break room, chatting with a coworker like nothing was wrong. She laughed at something he said, and the sound of it grated on my nerves. Lisa, I said, my voice loud enough to interrupt their conversation. She froze, her smile dropping as she turned to face me. Alex, she said, her tone wary. What are you doing here? I need a word, I said, ignoring the curious glance from her coworker. Her eyes darted around the room, clearly uncomfortable. Can this wait? I'm kind of in the middle of something. No, I said firmly. It can't. She sighed and followed me out into the hallway, her arms crossed defensively. What is it now? She asked, exasperated. I leaned in closer, keeping my voice low. You didn't think I'd just let you walk away from this, did you? Her expression faltered, the mask slipping for a moment before she regained her composure. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, you don't, I said, smirking. Let me make it clearer then. Last night wasn't just about you cheating, Lisa. It was about you underestimating me. Her brows furrowed. What are you? Let me guess, I interrupted. You thought you'd carry on your little affair, come up with some excuse to leave me, and move on like nothing happened. That's how this was supposed to play out, right? She said nothing, but the way her jaw tightened told me I'd hit a nerve. Well, I've got news for you, I continued. I'm not going to let you rewrite the narrative. You want to cheat, lie, and manipulate? Fine. But now, everyone's going to know who you really are. Her eyes widened. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and showed her a picture I'd taken last night. Her and her coworker, locked in their little embrace under the garden lights. I snapped it right before I walked in on them. Her face went pale. You wouldn't, she whispered. Oh, I would, I said, my voice deadly calm. Your boss, your friends, even your parents. They're all going to see this. Let's see how charming Mr. Perfect looks when he's exposed for sleeping with a married woman. Alex, wait, she said, panic creeping into her voice. She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. This isn't about revenge, I said. This is about justice. You want to play the victim? Go ahead. But the truth is coming out, whether you like it or not. She opened her mouth to protest, but I didn't stick around to hear it. I walked away, feeling the weight of her gaze on my back. For the first time in days, I felt like I was in control. That night, I sent the photo to Greg. He was the office gossip, the kind of guy who thrived on drama. By morning, it would be all over the company. I didn't need to tell him what to do. He'd handle the rest. When I woke up, my phone was flooded with texts. From coworkers, from mutual friends, even from Lisa. Her last message stuck with me the most. You've gone too far, Alex. I'll never forgive you for this. I stared at it for a long time before responding. You already broke us, Lisa. This is me showing you what broken feels like. By mid-morning, the office was ablaze with whispers. I didn't have to be there to feel the heat radiating from the gossip Greg had unleashed. He didn't hold back, of course, he never did. By the time Lisa arrived at work, The photo had already made its rounds, accompanied by the kind of embellished commentary Greg excelled at delivering. She looked like she wanted to crawl under her desk. One of my coworkers texted me. Another message followed. People are saying Mr. Perfect's wife found out. Ouch. That one made me pause. I hadn't thought much about the man she was seeing. Not beyond his smug face and the way he hovered around Lisa like a moth to a flame. But now I realized I might have unintentionally tipped over his carefully constructed world too. Good. I wasn't proud of what I'd done. But I didn't regret it either. Lisa had chosen to play games, and now she was learning how quickly they could spiral out of control. When Lisa called, I let it ring. She called again, and again. On the third try, I finally picked up, keeping my voice calm. What do you want? Are you serious, Alex? She hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? Plenty, I said flatly. I'd say it's about time you faced some consequences for your actions. Don't you think? You're pathetic, she snapped. Dragging my personal life through the mud like this? You think this makes you better than me? It doesn't make me better, I admitted. But it does make things even. She laughed bitterly. Even? Do you even hear yourself? You're acting like a petty, vindictive child. Petty? I shot back, my voice finally rising. Lisa, you destroyed our marriage. You lied, cheated, and treated me like I was disposable. Forgive me for not taking it with a smile. For a moment, there was silence on her end. Then she sighed, her tone softening. Alex, listen. I messed up. Okay? I know that. But what you've done, it's cruel. You're ruining my career, my life. For what? To prove a point. No, Lisa, I said. I'm not ruining your life. I'm exposing the one you were already living. You did this to yourself. Her voice hardened again. This isn't over. Maybe not for you, I said. But for me, it's done. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking as I set the phone down. By the afternoon, the fallout had taken on a life of its own. I heard through a friend at Lisa's office that her coworker, Mr. Perfect, had been pulled into HR after his wife showed up at the building, screaming his name in the lobby. Apparently, she'd seen the photo too. Lisa, on the other hand, had locked herself in her office, refusing to talk to anyone. Her boss, who'd once fawned over her, was now questioning her judgment. Co-workers who used to hang on her every word were avoiding her like the plague. That evening, I got a text from her. Congratulations. You've humiliated me. Are you happy now? I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. Not happy, just relieved. You made your bed, Lisa. Now lie in it. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I could breathe again. Lisa's betrayal had shattered me, but taking control of the narrative, forcing her to confront the reality of her actions, gave me a sense of closure I didn't think was possible. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about letting go. As I poured myself a drink that night, the phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Lisa. It was Greg. You're a legend, his text read. I smirked, set the phone down, and raised my glass. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Freedom, as it turns out, is short-lived when you're dealing with someone like Lisa. 2 days after the photobomb detonated, I started to notice the backlash creeping in. It began with small things. Mutual friends acting cold, people who used to greet me with a smile suddenly avoiding eye contact. Then came the texts. Dude, I heard what happened with Lisa. Not cool, man. Taking things public like that? That's low, Alex. She's saying you've been an emotional wreck for months and this was your way of lashing out. Is that true? Lisa had launched her counterattack, twisting the narrative into a pity-fueled sob story where she was the victim of a bitter, unstable husband. It was brilliant, honestly, a tactical move to shield herself from the fallout. And it was working. I sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through the messages, my frustration boiling over. It wasn't enough for her to destroy our marriage. Now she was trying to make me the villain. By the time Greg called, I was ready to explode. Hey man, he said, his voice unusually cautious. I just thought you should know. Lisa's been talking to HR. What? I snapped, gripping the phone tighter. Yeah, he said. Apparently, she's claiming you leaked that photo to harass her and damage her reputation. She's saying it was, revenge porn. I froze, the words slamming into me like a truck. You're kidding. I wish I was, Greg said. Look, I don't think it'll go anywhere. Everyone knows she's full of it. But you might want to be careful. She's gunning for you now. I hung up without responding, my head spinning. Lisa wasn't just trying to save face. She was trying to bury me. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I didn't want to escalate things further, but Lisa had left me no choice. If she wanted war, I'd give her one. By the afternoon, I had a clear plan. First, I compiled every piece of evidence I had. Texts, emails, even old conversations that hinted at her infidelity and manipulation. Second, I reached out to a few of our mutual friends, the ones who hadn't picked a side yet, and laid out the truth in no uncertain terms. It didn't take long for the tide to turn. The friends who had been cold started reaching out again, apologizing for believing her lies. One of them even sent me screenshots of a group chat where Lisa had bragged about getting ahead of the narrative and making Alex look unhinged. That's all I needed, my lawyer said when I forwarded the messages. She's digging her own grave now. The final blow came a week later when Lisa's affair partner, Mr. Perfect, officially lost his job. HR had been digging into his relationship with Lisa after the chaos erupted, and it turned out their emotional connection wasn't the first time he'd crossed a line. Apparently, he had a history of inappropriate conduct that Lisa had conveniently overlooked. When she found out, she showed up at my apartment, banging on the door like a madwoman. "Open the door, Alex," she screamed. I stood behind the door for a moment, debating whether to let her in. Finally, I opened it just enough to see her face. Flushed, furious, and frantic. "What do you want, Lisa?" I asked coldly. "You've ruined everything," she yelled, her voice cracking. "My job, my reputation, your life." I cut her off. "No, Lisa, you ruined your life. I just made sure the truth came out." She tried to push her way inside, but I blocked her path. "You don't get to spin this anymore. You cheated, you lied, and now you're facing the consequences. Stop trying to pin this on me." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't budge. "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I needed more." "You needed more?" I repeated, shaking my head. "Lisa, I gave you everything, and it still wasn't enough." She opened her mouth to respond, but I shut the door in her face, her protests muffled as I locked the deadbolt. That night, I got another message from Greg. "Dude, Lisa's leaving the company. She told everyone she needs a fresh start. Guess you won." But it didn't feel like winning. Felt like surviving. For the first time in weeks, I sat in silence, staring at the mess that had unfolded. Lisa was out of my life now, really out, and while it felt like the right thing, it didn't make the pain disappear. But as I poured myself a drink and sat back, I realized something important. The pain wasn't permanent. It was temporary. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally free to move on. The days after Lisa's meltdown were strangely quiet. No more frantic calls or angry texts. No more friends playing messenger with half-truths and exaggerated rumors. It was like a storm had passed, leaving me standing in the wreckage of my old life. But in that stillness, I started to rebuild. I didn't hear from Lisa again after the night she came to my door. A mutual friend told me she moved back to her parents' house in another city, leaving behind the job, the apartment, and the people she'd once controlled with her charm. I thought I'd feel satisfaction, maybe even triumph, but all I felt was relief. She was gone, and I could finally breathe again. The first real step forward came on a Saturday morning. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the windows, the warmth of it pulling me out of bed. I opened the windows, letting fresh air fill the apartment, and for the first time in weeks, it didn't feel suffocating. I spent the day cleaning, throwing out the little things that reminded me of Lisa. Her favorite mug, the picture frames with photos of vacations that felt like a lie now, even the ridiculous throw pillows she insisted on buying. By the time I was done, the apartment felt like it was mine again, not a museum of a life I didn't recognize anymore. Over the next few weeks, I focused on myself. I started going to the gym again, not just to burn off the anger and frustration, but to feel like I was taking control of my life. I reconnected with old friends, the kind who'd been there long before Lisa came along. the ones I'd lost touch with when our marriage consumed so much of my time. One night, I went out with Greg and a few coworkers. It was supposed to be a casual evening, just drinks and catching up, but it turned into something more. "Man, you've been through hell," Greg said, clapping me on the back. "But you came out the other side stronger. You should be proud of that." I didn't feel proud exactly, but I did feel different. Like I was finally starting to see the person I'd been before Lisa, before the lies, the betrayal, and the chaos. The real turning point came one quiet evening at the diner where I'd gone the night after Lisa's affair was revealed. I was sitting in the same corner booth, sipping coffee and staring out the window, when a woman slid into the seat across from me. "Mind if I sit here?" she asked, her smile warm and genuine. I glanced around, noticing the place was packed. "Go ahead," I said, motioning to the seat. We ended up talking for hours. Her name was Rachel, and she was nothing like Lisa. Where Lisa had been sharp and guarded, Rachel was open and curious. She laughed at my stupid jokes, asked thoughtful questions, and listened in a way that felt sincere. When the diner started closing for the night, she scribbled her number on a napkin and slid it across the table. "Call me," she said, standing to leave. I stared at the napkin for a long time after she left, my mind swirling. Part of me was hesitant, afraid to open myself up again so soon. But another part, a louder part, told me it was time to take a risk. Looking back now, I see Lisa's betrayal as both an ending and a beginning. She forced me to confront truths about myself and my life that I'd been avoiding for years. Her lies shattered my world, but they also freed me from a marriage that wasn't what I thought it was. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that betrayal doesn't have to define you. It can break you, yes, but it can also be the catalyst for something better, if you let it. As I sit here, staring at Rachel's number, I feel something I haven't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe I'll call her. Maybe I won't. But for the first time in what feels like forever, the choice is mine to make. And that's enough for now.